If you would genuinely rather reorganize your entire kitchen at midnight than walk into a packed venue on a Saturday, congratulations. Your brain just declined an invitation to a psychological obstacle course that most people don't even realize they're running. And no, you're not damaged. You're not anxious. You're not secretly broken underneath a polite smile. You're just seeing something most people are too overstimulated to notice. Picture this. Your phone buzzes. A friend texts, "Hey, we're heading downtown. This new place is insane. Wall-to-wall people, incredible energy. You have to come." And, immediately, before you've even fully read the message, something in you has already answered. Not with words. With a full-body response that communicates, very clearly, absolutely not. Not because you hate fun, not because you hate people, but because your brain just ran a quiet calculation, measured the cost of that environment against your available resources, and returned a verdict. The math doesn't work, and your brain, unlike most brains in that moment, actually showed you the math. That's not a flaw. That's not social anxiety dressed up in philosophical language. Your psychology is playing chess, while the crowd is playing a game that doesn't require thinking 3 moves ahead. Let me show you exactly what's happening in that brain of yours, because it's considerably more interesting than most people realize. Here's the first thing to understand. Your brain has no spam filter, and that is, against all appearances, a form of genius. Walk into a crowded space, and the average brain does something remarkably efficient. It deletes. It filters out most of the incoming data automatically. The strangers laugh 3 tables over and disappear. The conversation behind you gets muted. The subtle shift in someone's expression across the room never even registers. The brain decides, in milliseconds, that none of it is relevant. File, deleted. Your brain keeps it all. Not because something is malfunctioning, because your neural network was designed for something different: pattern recognition at a level of complexity that most brains simply aren't running. You notice the laugh that sounds slightly too forced, the conversation that pauses in a way that suggests someone said something they're pretending they didn't mean. The expression that changed for half a second before the smile covered it again. You filed all of it, and your brain, unlike everyone else's, is still reviewing those files. Psychologists call this sensory processing sensitivity, a trait found in roughly 20% of the population and in countless species beyond humans. It is not a disorder. It is a neurological design feature that kept your ancestors alive while everyone else was distracted around the campfire. Because while the extroverts were socializing at full volume, your ancestors were the ones who heard the predator approaching. Who noticed the plant that looked edible but wasn't? Who sensed that something about this situation was wrong before anyone else had registered the problem? Modern society was not designed for people who actually pay attention. But that is a flaw in modern society, not in you. Now here's the thing people always get wrong about crowd avoiders. They assume it's about not liking people. It isn't. You don't hate people. You hate the performance. Because in crowds, everyone is performing. The "I'm having so much fun" face. The "I'm totally listening" nod. The "I'm fine, everything is fine" energy that radiates off someone whose eye is twitching slightly and whose jaw is just barely too tight. In a crowded room, social masks go on automatically, and most people are so busy wearing their own that they never notice everyone else's. But you notice, constantly, involuntarily, and the exhaustion isn't from being around people. It's from the relentless, unwanted translation work your brain does on every interaction, reading what's underneath the words, tracking the body language that contradicts the sentence, processing the truth that nobody in the room is saying out loud. A study from Cambridge University found that people who prefer solitude score significantly higher on emotional intelligence measures than their crowd-loving counterparts. Not slightly higher, significantly. Which means the person standing at the edge of the party looking slightly uncomfortable isn't socially inept. They're socially sophisticated. They've simply refused to pretend that the performance is the same thing as the connection. You can do small talk. You're capable of it. But your nervous system experiences it, the way a serious chef experiences microwaved food. Technically, it's a meal, but at what cost? What your brain actually craves is substance, real conversation, the kind where nobody is managing an impression and something true gets said. And in a room of 300 people performing their highlight reels, that conversation is almost never available. If any of this is landing, if you're finally getting a scientific framework for something you've felt your whole life but never quite had words for, go ahead and like this video. It helps more people find this conversation. And if you want to keep exploring the psychology behind how different minds actually work, subscribe. This is exactly what we do here. Now here's where neuroscience gets genuinely fascinating. When an extrovert walks into a party, their brain releases dopamine, the reward chemical, the one that says yes, this is good, stay here, do more of this. It's a neurological parade, fireworks, the whole thing. The crowd itself is the reward. When you walk into the same party, crickets. Not because your reward system is broken, because it runs on something different. Neuroscientists have found that introverted brains are significantly more responsive to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that activates during introspection, deep focus, and quiet. Your brain doesn't get its high from external stimulation. It gets its high from internal space. From the book at midnight. From the solo walk where nobody asks you anything. From the quiet room where your mind finally has enough silence to actually work the way it was designed to. And here's the structural piece that most people have never heard. Neuroscientists have found that introverted brains have measurably thicker gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for complex thinking, abstract reasoning, and long-range planning. When you appear to be doing nothing, your brain is doing everything, processing, connecting, synthesizing, working through something that won't resolve itself in a loud room surrounded by competing input. You're not wasting a Saturday. You're composing something. While everyone else is consuming elevator music, your brain is somewhere in the middle of a symphony it started 3 days ago and isn't finished with yet. But there's one more layer, and this one explains why crowds don't just bore you, they actually exhaust you at a cellular level. Your mirror neurons are not normal. Mirror neurons are what allow humans to feel what other people feel, to wince when someone gets hurt, to feel residual anxiety after a difficult conversation, to leave a room carrying an emotion you didn't arrive with. Everyone has them. But in people with high perceptual sensitivity, they operate at a volume that most brains never reach. You don't just observe emotions in a crowd, you download them. Walk into a packed venue, and you're not managing your own emotional state. You're simultaneously absorbing fragments of 300 people's anxiety, excitement, boredom, irritation, and forced happiness, all arriving at once, none of it sorted, all of it requiring processing. Your nervous system is running the emotional data of an entire room, while also remembering to breathe and hold a conversation and appear normal. No wonder you need approximately 3 business days to recover from a 2-hour event. But here is the superpower that lives inside that cost. You are almost certainly the most emotionally intelligent person in any room you enter. You understand subtext naturally. You read what people need before they've finished the sentence. You sense the shift in energy before anyone has acknowledged it. Most people spend their entire lives barely understanding their own emotional state. You are out here, involuntarily, understanding everyone's. That is not a curse. That is a gift most people would collapse under, and you carry it so routinely, you've started to think it's just what being tired feels like. Here's the last thing, and it matters more than neuroscience. Society has a very specific story about what a good life looks like. It involves being busy, being loud, being surrounded, filling every calendar slot, and posting evidence that the filling happened. And if you're not doing that, if your Friday looks quiet and your weekend has long stretches of nothing in it, the story says you're losing. But you figured something out that takes most people decades to arrive at, if they arrive at all. Silence is not empty. Silence is where clarity actually lives. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is where you stop performing and finally meet yourself. The quietest rooms are not the emptiest. They are frequently the ones holding the loudest truths. And the peace you've built, the deliberate, unapologetic, non-negotiable peace, that is not isolation. That is liberation. So the next time someone asks why you don't go out more, why you left early, why you'd rather be home, why? The crowd never seems to call to you the way it apparently calls to everyone else. You don't have to explain the neuroscience. You don't have to justify the acetylcholine, or the gray matter, or the mirror neurons running at maximum capacity. You just know what your brain actually is, and what it needs, and what it's capable of when it gets that. You are not broken. You are not boring. You are not antisocial. You are built for depth in a world that is loudly, relentlessly, exhaustingly obsessed with noise. And honestly, that is exactly what makes you worth paying attention to. Are you fully team crowds give me life, or team I would genuinely rather befriend a cactus? Drop it in the comments. And if you've ever had to explain to someone why you need recovery time after a social event, tell me how that conversation went. You might be surprised how many people reading your words right now have been having the exact same conversation.